There are moments in sports that don't just change a game, they change a life. Not over a season, not over a career, but in a single instant. One pitch, one impact, one moment that separates what was from what could have been. For Tony Conigliaro, that moment came on a warm August night in 1967, and from that point forward, nothing was ever the same again. Tony Conigliaro wasn't just another young player rising through the ranks. He was Boston's own, a local kid born and raised just miles from Fenway Park, stepping into a dream that felt almost too perfect to be real. When he wore a Red Sox uniform, it wasn't just a jersey. It was a connection between a city and a player who reflected everything it believed in. He wasn't just playing in Boston, he belonged to it. And what made it even more remarkable was how quickly he became special. By the age of 20, Conigliaro had already done something most players spend their entire careers chasing. In 1965, he led the American League in home runs with 32, at 20 years old. Not just competing, dominating, not just promising, delivering. That kind of start doesn't just suggest talent. It suggests something bigger, something rare. The kind of trajectory that doesn't just lead to a good career, but to something historic. He had power, but it wasn't just raw strength. It was timing. It was instinct. It was the ability to read the game in a way that made everything look just a little easier than it should have been. Pitchers couldn't figure him out, and when they tried, he adjusted faster than they could react. Fans saw it. Teammates felt it. The media followed it. Everything about Tony Conigliaro pointed in one direction, toward greatness. By 1967, the Boston Red Sox were in the middle of something unexpected. A season that would later be called the impossible dream. A team that wasn't supposed to compete suddenly found itself winning, pushing, believing. And right in the middle of it all was Conigliaro, still just 22 years old, continuing to build on what had already been an incredible start. He had already hit 20 home runs that season, contributing to a lineup that was suddenly alive with possibility. There was momentum, there was energy, and there was a feeling that something special was happening, not just for the team, but for him personally. He wasn't just part of the story, he was becoming one of its central figures, the kind of player who doesn't just fit into a moment, but helps define it. Everything was moving forward, everything was building, everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. And then, in one pitch, it all stopped. On August 18th, 1967, the Red Sox were playing the California Angels. It wasn't a historic game. It wasn't a moment anyone had circled in advance. It was just another night in a long season. Another at-bat, another opportunity. The kind of moment that usually comes and goes without leaving any mark at all. Tony Conigliaro stepped into the batter's box, calm, focused, doing what he had done hundreds of times before. On the mound was Jack Hamilton, a pitcher trying to do his job, trying to execute a pitch the way every pitcher does, inside, aggressive, controlled. But this one wasn't controlled. The pitch came in fast, too far inside. And before anyone had time to react, it struck him directly in the face. The sound was different. Not like a normal hit by pitch. Not like something you brush off and walk away from. It was sharp, immediate, final. He didn't flinch. He didn't try to run. He didn't even take a step. He just dropped. The stadium went silent in a way that only happens when something feels wrong on a deeper level. Fans didn't cheer. Players didn't move right away. There was a pause, a collective realization that what had just happened wasn't part of the game anymore. It was something else. Conigliaro lay on the ground, motionless, blood visible. Teammates rushed in, medical staff followed, and in that moment, baseball didn't feel like a sport. It felt fragile. It felt unpredictable. It felt like something that could change everything without warning. Because that one pitch didn't just hit a player, it hit a future. The damage was severe. A fractured cheekbone, significant trauma to his face, and most importantly, lasting damage to his eye. For a hitter, vision isn't just important, it's everything. The ability to track a pitch traveling at high speed, to recognize movement, to react in fractions of a second, that's what defines success. And in an instant, that ability had been compromised. This wasn't the kind of injury you recover from easily. This wasn't a matter of rest or time or gradual return. This was something deeper, something that changed the way he saw the game, literally and figuratively. The very thing that had made him special was now uncertain. And that's what made it so cruel. Because nothing about Tony Conigliaro's downfall came from something he did wrong. He didn't make a mistake. He didn't take a risk that backfired. He was simply standing in the batter's box, doing what he had always done. When something unpredictable changed everything. He missed the remainder of the 1967 season, a season that ended with the Red Sox reaching the World Series, a season he had helped build, helped shape, helped carry forward. But when the moment arrived, when the team reached its peak, he wasn't there. And while the city celebrated, there was a quiet absence that never fully went away. The road back was long. It was uncertain. It was filled with doubt that didn't always show on the surface but was always there in the background. Surgeries, rehabilitation, constant questions about whether his vision would ever return to what it once was, whether he would ever be able to compete at the same level again. But Tony Conigliaro didn't give up. In 1969, he came back, and for a moment, it looked like the story might continue. He hit 20 home runs again, showing flashes of the player he had been. Then, in 1970, he hit 36 home runs. After everything, after the injury, after the uncertainty, after the doubt. It felt like redemption, like proof that what had been taken could somehow be reclaimed. But sometimes, even when you come back, you're not the same, because the damage never fully disappeared. The vision issues lingered, subtle at first, then more noticeable. The game that once felt clear, predictable, controllable, began to shift. Timing became harder. Reactions slowed just enough to matter. And in baseball, just enough is everything. By 1971, his performance began to decline. Not because he stopped working, not because he lost his drive, but because the game itself had changed for him. The thing he relied on most, his ability to see, to react, to trust what he was seeing, was no longer consistent. Eventually, he stepped away. Still young. Still with potential that hadn't fully played out. Still with a sense that there was more left to give, but no longer able to compete the way he once had. And just like that, one of baseball's brightest futures was left unfinished. Tony Conigliaro finished his career with over 160 home runs, a number that, under normal circumstances, would have been a starting point, not an ending. Because if you look at his trajectory, if you look at what he was doing at such a young age, there's a very real argument that he was on a Hall of Fame path. Not based on hope, not based on imagination, based on reality. But baseball doesn't measure what could have been. It measures what was, and what was changed in a single moment. Tony Conigliaro's story isn't just about talent. It's about how fragile greatness can be, how quickly everything can shift, how 1 second can take something that feels certain and turn it into something unfinished. He didn't fade over time. He didn't decline naturally. He was stopped. And that's what makes this story stay with you. Because we didn't watch him fail. We just never got to see how far he could go. If this story made you think, if it made you realize how quickly everything can change, not just in baseball, but in life, then hit that like button and subscribe. Because some of the most powerful stories in sports aren't about the legends we remember. They're about the ones we almost had.